So welcome back. If you're just joining us, we're currently in Module 1, Chapter 2 of the Fixed INEC report. And what I'm trying to do in this report is to take you through the report to ensure that you have a detailed understanding on how to advocate for electoral reforms, starting from understanding why you need to advocate for electoral reforms. In Chapter 1, we're able to provide you with detailed data and information using data numbers. We're able to make a case for why we need to fix Nigeria. Because the reason why we need to transform or reform our electoral system is not in isolation. It's not something that sits in isolation. It's connected to the desire to fix and transform Nigeria. And so I made that case in Chapter 1. In Chapter 2, in Part 1 of the report, we're going to be looking at Nigeria's leadership crisis and the role of this leadership crisis in some of the data and the challenges and the issues facing Nigeria. So what's the role? What's Nigeria's leadership crisis? And what role has that played in our performance as a nation? To understand the role of our leadership, of the leadership equation, of leadership in delivering the kind of outcomes that I've shared in the Chapter 1 of this report, we have to understand the concept of representative leadership in a democracy. The idea is that in democracy, we're over 200 million of us. For example, in Nigeria, we cannot all sit down one place and make a decision on every single thing that needs to happen to move us forward, collectively as a people. And so what we do is that we bring people together to make decisions on our behalf. And so there are basic assumptions about representative leadership in democracy. And the first assumption in that system that currently governs us is that the people is sovereign. The people hold the highest authority. And now what they do is they now willingly transfer that authority to representatives through a democratic process, such as elections. They give those people the trust and responsibility to act on their behalf. In a representative democracy, these officials are tasked with making decisions on the interest of the larger whole of the citizens who own the power. Now, when we give these people the power to make decisions, there's a responsibility on citizens, on these people, to be accountable and responsible in how they use that power that we give them. So there's an accountability and responsibility quotient. There's also checks and balances to ensure that those people that we're giving the power to make decisions on our behalf do that in a way they're operating within a framework that is in our interests. And that power is not forever. It is revocable. It's temporary. Because realities change, the desires and the aspirations of citizens will change over time, and so they might choose and desire that a new representative should go and represent them. And every power that is given or embodied or delegated on these representatives need to be exercised within the confines of the rule of law, statutes, constitutional provisions, and regulations that outline the limits of the authorities in order to protect the rights of the citizens that give them that power. Now, the reason why this is the case is that with this framework, the desired outcome is efficient governance. Because if you have everybody making a say or having a say in every micro part of governance, it's impractical. 200 million people cannot be making decisions on budget every single time, or several things, or no. So representation allows various voices to be represented by two elected officials. And then it also enables public trust, because there is a system whereby the citizens and those put in power, there's a connection between both of them to ensure that those that are given power do not go against the desires of citizens. So that's the current infrastructure and system of government that we currently run. In summary, we give a certain set of people the power to make decisions on our behalf, decisions that will lead to good governance outcomes, to lead to national development, growth, you name it. And so the people that we've given the power to make those decisions on our behalf in the last couple of years has not delivered. They failed to deliver on that trust that we've given them. So when we talk about leadership in Nigeria, or representative leadership in Nigeria, it's important that we define the scope of that. It's super important that we do that. Why? Because your pastor can be a leader. Your boss is a leader. Your town hall chairman is a leader. Your father and your mother is a leader. You are also a leader if you have a family. In the office, you're a leader. Professional organizations, you're a leader. But in the scope of this context of Nigeria's underperformance, we have to define that scope. And so what is Nigeria's leadership structure? The people who we are engaging and talking about. We have the federal government. We have the state government structure. So this federal government made up of the president, executive, national assembly, that made up of the legislative branch consisting of 2 chambers, the Senate of 109 senators, and the representative made up of 260 members. We also have the judiciary as well. That's made up of the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal, Federal High Courts, and other federal high courts. They made up of the federal structure. They are the ones with that federal structure. Then we have the state government structure made up of 36 states, and that mirror the structure we have in the federal structure. We have the State House of Assemblies, we have the State Judiciary and Chief Justice that oversees the State High Courts. We also have the local government infrastructure. We have over 774 local government areas that have their own chairmen leading them and caretakers, you name them. We have local government councillors, we have local government chairmen, council members, you name them. They are responsible for primary education administration, local infrastructure maintenance, you name it. And there are constitutional frameworks and powers that we empower these different power structures. So for example, for the federal structure, they have exclusive powers. From national security and defense, foreign relations, monetary policy and currency, immigration and citizenship, mine and minerals, interstate commerce, you name them. They also have concurrent powers. Powers that they share with the states, such as education, healthcare, agriculture, industrial development. And the state also has powers as well, such as urban development, primary education, healthcare facilities, housing development, you name them. Also, the local government too also has powers and functions. These different powers interact. They coordinate. Federal, state, and local government all coordinate, interact to deliver good governance outcomes for Nigerians. So now, we've been able to establish the fact that the leadership we're talking about is not your pastor, your imam, your CEO. No, we're focusing on the confines of the federal, state, and local government power structure. We've been able to establish the fact that we give these people under the representative structure that we are in the power to make decisions on our behalf. Why have they failed to deliver? Why have they failed to deliver? And the reason why they failed to deliver is because there are quite a number of leadership gaps and failures that are bound across these different tiers of our government. Nigeria's development challenges can be linked to the failures of the leaders that we elect to serve this country. So what are the failures? There's been a gap in policy implementation. From policy formulation weaknesses, to implementation deficiencies, to monitor and evaluation inadequacies. You have people who we elect and the way they make decisions when it comes to policy formulation, implementation, and the rest. We have gaps in addressing corruption and lack of accountability. And this has had an impact on the scale of corruption. We also had in terms of anti-corruption agency, judiciary, you name them. We also have gaps when it comes to building strong institutions. Our leaders have not been able to build strong institutions. The judiciary system is experiencing challenges. There's legislative oversight failures. So, for example, bills takes an average of 3 to 5 years to pass. Most bills passed lack implementation. The judiciary, there are over 243,000 cases that are pending in court today. Our judiciary is currently overstaffed. So there are judiciary system weaknesses. There's also civil service deficiencies and structural issues, from competency gaps to administrative inefficiencies, regulatory body weaknesses. There's also a gap in crisis management from our leaders, being able to lead in times of crisis. For example, the Boko Haram insurgency response. Our leaders failed in managing insurgency. This has led to loss of lives. How they managed the NSAS protests and bad governance protests. The repeated failure in how they managed the flood responses. Respond to flood response. How they managed banditry and kidnapping. The COVID-19 response strategy and how it has been managed. Ethnic conflicts, how it has been managed, from farmer-herder conflicts, you name them. So there is a gap in how our leaders manage crisis. There's a gap in accountability and trust. There's a serious gap in decision making. The quality of decisions our leaders make, there's been a serious gap in that. For example, gap in planning. Most of our leaders are short-term focused. They lay emphasis on short-term solutions over long-term strategies. When it comes to how they deploy resources, there's poor prioritization of resources on strategic initiatives, poor budget allocation, social development challenges, data utilization challenges, economic planning and industrial development challenges. There's also a leadership capacity gap. From technical competencies, most of our leaders lack analytical skills, management capabilities, how to manage information, how to deal with expert inputs. There's also a gap in technical competence, the raw analytical competence, technical skills to make really good decisions. And so what are the key drivers to these different gaps in the leaders that we trust to make decisions? Because these gaps has led to the outcomes that I discussed in chapter 1. What are the key drivers of this gap? A major key driver of this gap is corruption. We all know that. Weak institutions. When the judiciary, legislature, and law enforcement agencies are weak, there's a system of political patronage and elitism. The culture of patronage, where we don't put the best of us, we put the worst of us. Those that we know, nepotism, who I know, my brother, my sister, those kind of things. My uncle, my auntie, my people, from my state, my local government. This culture of political patronage and elitism has had a significant effect on the quality of leadership that we enjoy. And also a major factor that we're now discussing today is our poor electoral systems and electoral manipulation. Because we've had regular elections since 1999, but our electoral system is flawed. We have a lot of irregularities, vote rigging. And so what that means is that it enables illegitimate leaders to emerge. And so the kind of leaders that we need with the right competencies and that do not have some of the deficiencies that I talked about in the past are unable to emerge because the structure, the electoral process that enables us to elect them and get them in power is nowhere to be found. There's also ethnic and religious divisions. Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, Christian, Muslim, very different things. The social, cultural fabric of our nation is fractured. We're struggling to be a cohesive whole. It's affecting the quality because now unqualified leaders are able to exploit these loopholes to rise to the top and lead. This has led and impacted the quality of our development. So there's been an impact. There's a leadership crisis that has led to economic stagnation, social unrest and instability, erosion of public trust, inadequate public services, you name it. And so, what I've been able to achieve in this chapter is make a very, very strong case that we have a leadership crisis on our hand. In chapter 2, there's a leadership crisis. So in part 1, chapter 2, I'm going to make a case that there's a leadership crisis on our hand, and it has a role in affecting our nation's underperformance. And so if you want to change things, if you want to transform the state of these things, there's a role that INEC has to play. So in chapter 3, next chapter, I'm going to talk about the role of INEC in enabling the quality of leaders that has all the deficits that I've mentioned in this chapter, in this lesson. The role of INEC and how it has enabled ineffective elected leaders to emerge. And these leaders have now given birth to the outcomes I mentioned and talked about in chapter 1 of part 1 of this report. See you in chapter 3.